Fantasy baseball on deck, everybody. This is Austin. It is 5/6/2022, and we're rolling through this fantasy baseball season. Today's episode, I want to talk more about the maybe like the Dynasty leagues, but there absolutely are some really important notes kind of as we move forward for the players, the subscribers that or play kind of in everyday leagues, redraft leagues, kind of like the normal. So, first case of business, you guys have been to my homepage, my home YouTube page. The only difference here that I kind of wanted to point out is that I started Twitter, specifically just to be able to give you guys live updates quicker and more concisely than the long videos. So if you care to receive those, feel free to follow. It'll be kind of the same information, just in quicker tidbits. And I can, if I'm out away from my house, I'm able to, give you updates as I'm reading along and experiencing these as you experience them as well. So if you go to my Twitter page, again, it's very similar information than what you're used to. We're going to talk about Royce Lewis. And the kind of a good example, like I was able to tweet this information out 6 hours before I was able to, actually create a video to talk about him. So a lot of times fantasy baseball, it's all about being quicker than the next, 9 people that are in your league. So, again, I think this will be a good resource for everyone and me to, be able to be more accountable to you guys with more timely information. So, as we go on to our next topic, keep this in mind. So, as I just kind of mentioned, Royce Lewis, and if you can tell, kind of talking about timely information, he's already owned in one of my leagues, and that makes sense because Royce Lewis is the number one overall draft pick in 2017 and the number one prospect for the Minnesota Twins. So he is starting tonight in the 7 hole and taking over for Carlos Correa. They originally was expected that he had a fractured or a broken hand or wrist, and now it's come back that it is negative. So Royce Lewis will only have, let's say the better part of a week to start at shortstop, but they've been planning for this for a long time. So like when they signed Carlos Correa, they fully expected to transition Royce to another position, maybe to third base, maybe to second base, to outfield, because he is such a talent and is their number one prospect. So Carlos Correa is going to be the number one shortstop in that lineup, because that's why they gave them the huge contract to do so, but they're going to find a space for Royce to fit. So look for Royce to, this is the initiation of him coming into the major leagues, but he's here to stay. So, once Carlos Correa comes back from his hand injury, he is going to take back his shortstop role, but that only means that Royce is going to gain other position eligibility. So really, really valuable guy to keep your eyeballs on. If you're not hurting for position players and you don't need a shortstop specifically, I think you can let him sit for a little while, similar to Jose Miranda on the same team. One of their other really, really good prospects who just came up. They're not going to be, again, every single day players to start out. So I think you can safely kind of view them from the sidelines to start. But again, someone super valuable as we're moving forward. But again, today is his debut. He's hitting 7th in the lineup. And when Carlos Correa comes back, he will transition to other positions, which is just, more fancy value. So we'll go on to the next player. I've talked about Ramon Laureano before. He is going to be the number 1, 2, 3 hole hitter for Oakland, because he's always been that, going back to the last 2 seasons, or even back to 2019. He's been a pretty productive player as of late. So he's 27 years old now, super duper young, obviously. But the thing with Oakland players and them establishing a roster is those guys that are absolute staples in their lineups get 600 bats plus. Like with Marcus Semien, for example, and Matt Chapman and Olsen, through the years for that Oakland lineup. Those guys that play every single day within those first 4 spots in their lineup, they play every single day. They don't get any off days. It's one of those things where it's like, they're working with so little salary cap, it seems like that they just don't really utilize their bench, and they just put more arms in the bullpen to go that way. So they'd rather have more arms in the bullpen than have bench players for the position. So just expect Ramon Laureano to be an everyday player. If you need an outfielder, I think this is a really safe bet. He comes back on Sunday. So he is going to be, again, their number 2 or 3 hole hitter. He won't hit leadoff this year because he has too much power and they need some power in that lineup. But he's going to play every single day in center field as the 2 or 3 hole for Oakland, and expect him to be around a 240 to 260 hitter. And last year he was on pace to hit 25 plus home runs, and that's been about his expectations every year that he has been. He's always been healthy. He's coming back from suspension, PED suspension, so he's not coming off of an injury. So even less reason to worry about his overall outcomes and such. So Ramon Laureano, if you need an outfielder, I think this is a pretty safe bet, and only owned in 9.1% of leagues, so you are kind of ahead of the ball game. But he comes back on Sunday, so if you need him, keep your eyeballs out, adjust accordingly. Next is Edward Olivares. So Edward Olivares, not a super highly touted prospect out of Kansas City, but he does seem that he's going to get kind of the everyday, playing feel like for this roster that's really struggling to generate runs. 26-year-old, the funny thing that I wanted to mention is just like all these years that I've been covering baseball, it seems like since the Vietnam War that the only thing you can count on is death, taxes, and Whit Merrifield leading off and leading the entire Major League Baseball and at bats. And they actually have so far that this year they've transitioned Whit now down to the the 6 hole in their batting lineup, which is wild. But again, if Edward Olivares can keep up his average anywhere close to 300, he's expected to steal bases, and Kansas City Royals over the years have been the team that run the absolute most. They've stolen, or at least attempted to steal, the most bases in baseball for the last couple of years. So or at least the AL, like that, they're always running. You think of teams being behind, like how do you get back in these ball games? You got to steal some bases, take some cheap runs when you can. So this is another guy you can kind of sit back on. This is more of like a dynasty ad for those super duper deep dynasty leagues. And a dynasty league means that you draft a team and you can keep a certain percentage of players kind of every year, and then there's a certain percentage that go back in the player pool and you draft, but you only draft like a part of it, a fraction of a team instead of an entire roster every year, like unlike standard league. So Edward Olivares, 26 years old, not a super highly touted prospect, but who cares how highly touted prospects are if they are they're producing. So he's only got 33 at bats on the season, but if we look here, like he's been an everyday player since he's been called up. So, a guy to keep your eye on. And if he keeps hitting, they're going to keep him in the lineup because he is, they're just struggling to generate runs in general. So, just a guy to keep your eye on, otherwise. And even more so, MJMendez is catcher eligible. And if you think about Kansas City Royals, what's the first player that you generally think of? And it's going to be Salvador Perez. But Salvador Perez being so important to their lineup, Salvador Perez is never going to come out. But what's interesting and what's been happening, since he's gotten called up over the last 2 games, and he is one of their highly touted prospects. He is he's their second overall prospect in their lineup behind Bobby Witt Jr., who's the number 1 overall prospect in all of baseball. He's their second prospect in their organization, and he's 49th overall. So not only is he a catcher eligible, which just about anybody can use a catcher. Catchers are super valuable because if you don't get one of the top 3 guys, then they're all kind of run of the mill. But again, what's super valuable, and I'm trying to get to, I'm rambling, is when Salvador Perez is not behind the plate, he's super valuable because they're moving him into the DH role. And the thing about MJMendez is they're doing the exact same thing. When Salvador Perez is behind the plate, MJ has been in the DH spot. And again, this has only been the last 2 games since he's been called up, but he has enough of a repertoire, a story of like succeeding in the minors that he is absolutely, expected to produce. But, again, this is a guy who hit 41 home runs last season across all levels of the minor leagues. So, absolutely a guy to give a shot if you don't have someone reliable at catcher. And it looks like he's going to play just about every day because, again, the Royals are doing all they can to generate some runs. They're kind of went into this season as a win now team. They thought that they were closer than they actually were. It's kind of similar with the Detroit Tigers, both kind of teams that are willing to make make significant adjustments because the division is so bad. It's the Indians. The White Sox should run away with it, but the White Sox are struggling. So it's the Indians, the Royals, the Tigers, the White Sox, and they all think that they can, squeeze out a fairly easy playoff berth. So again, if this guy continues to hit, if he hits in general, hits for power like he has, he's going to stay in the lineup. And at the catcher eligibility, playing DH every other day, he's not a catcher. That's a huge value. So someone to absolutely add to your watch list because, again, if he catches fire, it's someone you need to have on your roster, especially if it's a Dynasty League. Next is Andres Jimenez. I think there's 17 ways to spell Jimenez, but this one in particular, he is 26. He's 23 years old. He's hitting 344, and he's hitting the 6-hole as an everyday player with the Guardians. So, I don't – maybe he's a flash in the pan. I think that the Guardians as a whole this season have been a flash in the pan. Like, there's no way that they're going to keep up their, second – in the major leagues, second in the AL, and runs scored to start the season. But, if a guy that like this, who's getting second base eligibility, and there's not really a ton of second basemen that I love, if you need a little extra depth, he's super young. If you think about 23-year-olds, they're all fast twitch muscle fibers. They're super explosive. This is the fastest they're going to be. If you need people to steal bases, I know he's only stolen one base, but if he stays in the bat, and they haven't had to steal bases. That's the thing is so even Miles Straw is one of the fastest players in the league, and he's their leadoff hitter. Miles Straw hasn't even necessarily stolen as many bases as he could have so far this year because they've been generating so many runs. That's kind of thing with the Royals. Like the Royals are always stealing bases because they're always behind. The Guardians are scoring enough runs, and their pitching staff is good enough to where they don't have to be as risky. So, expect as things kind of start to level out and the Guardians start to come back to normal, that this guy could even steal some more bases for you. So, I didn't even realize he had a shortstop eligibility too. So that's even more valuable. He's got second base and shortstop eligibility. Again, if you need second base or shortstop, or if you have a Carlos Correa, even if you need a couple of day filler, if you're a Carlos Correa owner and you don't want to go the Royce Lewis route because he doesn't have a distinct track record in the major leagues, Andres Jimenez seems like a pretty safe bet for the short time being. But again, even in deeper dynasty leagues, this guy might turn out to be fairly valuable. So on to Juan Yepez, and I like his last name. First base eligible, if you think about Paul Goldschmidt being at St. Louis, he doesn't have necessarily a place to play if you look at it from this perspective. So we got to remember that ESPN puts so little amount of effort into fantasy baseball. They're not going to give him the credit for the positions that he also plays. So know that Juan Yepez also plays third base and is expected to play the corner outfield spots. Dylan Carlson, they have a lot of faith in, but he struggled so bad to start the year, and they have a DH spot. Expect Juan to get a lot of at-bats. And what's notable as well is that not only is hitting 571 to start the season, I know it's only 7 at-bats to start the year, but they're starting him in the 5-hole. The St. Louis roster that's, gunning for playoffs. They're on the heels of the Brewers, and that's going to come neck and neck at the end of the year. So Juan Yepez, again, he's only owned in 2.3% of rosters. Not worth an ad right this second for someone who is playing in a redraft league. So there's kind of a standard, if you don't keep your players, if you redraft every year, then maybe this guy just you add to your roster, add to your watch list, absolutely, but maybe not add right now. We'll let him get a couple more games. If he does seem to be an everyday guy, then him being in the 5-hole of the St. Louis team should be pretty solid. So. A funny note, I looked back and watching Albert Pujols play at what's labeled 42 years old is hysterical at this point, to say the least. And I also looked and saw, like, you know what? I bet to you that they're probably only playing Albert Pujols on like Saturdays and for sure Sunday games at home, just as a ticket selling point, because he doesn't cost any money. And him and Wainwright and Molina are all retiring the same year. They just wanted this like big show, Albert, Molina, and Wainwright to be on the same team, you know, because they're the only players left from that 2006 World Series team. They're going to play him every Sunday just to like trot him out there to get for the fans per se to sell tickets. But it looks like Juan Yepez is going to be, you know, kind of the everyday DH guy, and again slot in at other positions. He's not going to get any time at third base because, you know, Nolan Arenado is best defensive third baseman, you know, with Matt Chapman in baseball. But again, if he's hitting, they're going to find spots for him in the outfield and or just slot him in as DH as much as possible. But again, positive because he's hitting in the 5-hole and he's hitting for power, yada, yada. So only 7 at bats, but a guy for sure to add to your watch list and just sort of track as we go. And next is Rowdy Tellez. I don't hate the Brewers. I have no reason to hate a team that's named after, you know, people that just make beer. But Rowdy Tellez, over his career, he's 27 years old. There's a bit of a track record. You know, he's hitting so far this year. He's hitting 273. In the last 7 days, he's absolutely tearing it up. He's got 7 home runs on the year. 4 of them have been within the last week. He's on a fire tear right now. I don't expect this to be a long-term thing, but if there's if you have injuries in the future, if you have, you know, you need to add some depth at a first base slot, or if you specifically need a DH slot, which are weird, not a utility, but specifically a DH spot, then I think that's a pretty safe bet. He's the most added player and of all of the batters except for Taylor Ward, which we added Taylor Ward weeks ago because we're smarter than all of the rest of the guys. But Rowdy Tellez, he's hitting in the 5-hole for Milwaukee. Milwaukee kind of lives and dies by the home run, and they play in predominantly home run friendly ballparks. So if he continues to hit 275, if he hits 250 and up in the 5-hole, regardless of what lineup he's in, he's strong enough and expected to hit enough home runs that he's worth rostering. But I kind of want to see a little more of a track record, given how bad I really think that Milwaukee offense is. Though that they've been exploding over the last couple of weeks, they've also played really horrible teams. So if we go like through their last couple series, it's Cincinnati, worst team in baseball, Chicago Cubs, Pittsburgh Pirates, and so on. So I think he's going to eventually even out, but it's, if you want to add him now because he's hot, feel confident, but also just know that you can drop him back like if it doesn't really work out. So Rowdy Tellez, I think he's a little bit of a flash in the pan, but, and again, say if you get like super duper bonuses for home runs specifically, or if you're playing in a categories league and like home runs is where you're kind of hurting, then maybe he can help, but he's not going to steal any bases if you see this guy's body form. So anyways, on to the next player, and I'm going to raise my voice because very, very important. Spencer Strider is a relief pitcher for now for the Atlanta Braves. So Spencer Strider to start the year is absolutely tearing crap apart. So he has been piggybacking every game. So if we go back to even April 11th, 17th, 23rd, April 30th, and then today he's on the screen behind me. He's not pitching anymore. But the thing is that this guy is striking out. His strikeout percentage is currently 46.3%, even then before I calculated this past this past inning, which even had a couple more strikeouts than that. His strikeout percentage is just about at 50%. He's 23 years old. And the thing of why I don't think anyone, and he's the number 2 prospect in the entire Atlanta Braves organization, why I don't think that he has a lot of popularity behind him right now is because he's not starting games. But if we look at his, if we look at the dates here, we exit out of here. We go to Bryce Elder, who is starting games. Bryce Elder, similar dates, okay? And then the other starting pitcher for the Atlanta Braves that he's piggybacking off of is Jesse Chavez, who pitched today, and he only pitched for an inning today and got yanked like right after that for Strider. Similar dates. So it's like if you match up, and you can go back and look at this, if you look at Elder's dates and you look at Chavez's dates, Strider is coming in right after them. And that's even better because when he's pitching his 3-4 innings, he has the opportunity to get wins too, and he's striking out everyone. So I think and if you, again, going to their current starting pitching lineup, it's Ian Anderson, Charlie Morton, and Max Fried. 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, Bryce Elder hasn't been sent down to the minors yet, but sent to AAA. Tuki Toussaint, sent to AAA. Kyle Muller, sent to AAA. Who Oscar, who I have a lot of faith in. I think he's going to be good. He's just had a little rough start to the year. He's 24 years old. He's also sent to AAA. So it's down to literally they have Ian Anderson, Charlie Morton, and Kyle Wright that are locked into starting pitchers. And then plus Max Fried. But that fifth spot, they're just throwing out Jesse Chavez and Bryce Elder with Strider piggybacking right behind them. So if they're trying to stretch out Strider to a starting pitching role, holy crap, would that be one of the most valuable guys in all of baseball, regardless if you're a Dynasty League guy, whether you're a yearly redraft league guy or gal, absolutely important because he, again, what are his stats for today? I have him playing on the TV behind me. He came in the second inning, 4 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts. He's not going to get the win because he left the ball game as a tied game, but 4 innings pitched, 4 hits, no runs, 8 strikeouts, 2.16 ERA. And again, what's most important is we look down at his pitches. They let him get up to 69 pitches, 70 pitches. If they're consistently stretching him out to be a starter, this is a guy that I wouldn't even mess around. I would just add him as quickly as possible, because the second that he starts to become an everyday, starter in that lineup, in that rotation, every 5 days or so, 23 years old, crazy stats. This is Tyler Glass now, level of production. Now, maybe is it sustainable? Is it not? I don't know, but it's similar to a Tyler Glass now, level of production at this age, 23 years old, absolutely electric, and all of the run support. So please add, if you'd have listened to anything today, and I maybe should have even let off with it, add Tyler Strider at least to your watch list. And if you don't have people that you absolutely love in your bench and your pitching slots, find a space for him. Somehow he was already taken in my league, which is dumb. But this is a guy that you absolutely should get a hold of. And I'm actually adding tonight in my Dynasty League that I don't really talk a whole lot about, but I share with my brother. But yeah, this is a guy, again, 23 years old, 50% strikeout rate with a 2.16 ERA. So Spencer Strider, add that mustache to your roster. He's currently smile/frowning in this this picture, but you'll be smiling all the way to the bank with your fantasy baseball winnings. So anywho, that's the end of today's show. It was a pretty quick one, good for us. But anyways, enjoy your Friday evening and go Red Legs. Ugh.